Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. Today we have Tim Stafford with us. Tim is a talent recruitment specialist, and he has years of experience. I was lucky to connect with him on LinkedIn, and we're so glad to have him on our podcast today to talk about the culture of, the recruitment field, what he's seen and all of his experiences, and hopefully some insights that can really help you all as you continue on your internship journeys. So, Tim, would you be able to kind of talk a little bit about your experiences, introduce yourself, somewhat of a high level view on what you've seen?
Yeah, sounds good. And first of all, thank you for inviting me to this. I'm always happy to help interns and new grads on their journey to finding great jobs. My career spans about 26, 27 years. I started out in the agency world, doing accounting and finance, and moved into tech recruiting in the late 90s as the dot-com boom happened. And after a bit of a lull in the market fell by the wayside, I started to go in-house and join great companies like Intuit, and LinkedIn, Quantum, even Apple, Google, a plethora of larger companies. Then I started my own company in 2011, doing a lot of fractional recruiting projects for startups mainly, Series A, seed funded up to Series C. And then once in a while would get into some different larger companies like biotech and pharmaceutical projects as well. But yeah, my career spans a lot of different areas from accounting and finance to technical recruiting, sales, marketing, people ops, legal, biotech, storage, you name it. So I've done a little bit of everything. I haven't done much medical, but here and there I've done a little bit of like nursing and, psychiatrist type of searches, but it's pretty minimal. So that's me in a nutshell. I've created processes. I've hired all the way up to CFO, CEO level down to individual contributor, and I'm good at developing a streamlined process, coaching, helping candidates find what they need to put on their resume building, and really just how to interview. That's my core strengths.
So, in today's ecosystem and how competitive the workforce is, what are some of your takeaways that you believe every intern or every candidate should have as they apply for whether it's an internship or a full-time job? Anything that you see certain fields look at specifically in candidates?
Yeah, it really depends on, what they're studying and what the person's sort of focus is. But, there is one common thread and common theme is really having a really outstanding LinkedIn profile and really, aligning that with the resume. So putting on your resume and your LinkedIn profile, projects that you're working on, what sort of projects that you're putting out there to different communities and user groups, and are you contributing to discussions and problems and projects that are community based. So I think having that intersection of both corporate and internships and sort of highly diverse projects that you're working on, for engineers, definitely putting on the different languages and stuff that you're working on, whether it's AI, machine learning based, the coding languages. If you're a finance major, are you doing a certification program? Are you involved in different financial user groups? Do you want to pursue a CPA at some point? Having all of this and sort of talking about how you sell yourself is really key, for anybody who's looking for work.
Yeah, and I think those are very valid points, especially the LinkedIn profile. I know that right now I'm kind of in the mode where I'm trying to perfect that as well. So just talking about LinkedIn, there is the network feature on LinkedIn as well. So how do you think people can, leverage the most of their network, whether it's through a platform like LinkedIn or whether it's in person? Do you have any sort of guide in how to tap into connections with alumni or people who've worked in these companies before getting into the recruitment cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different ways you can build your network. Obviously, if you're not currently working, then student and alumni associations are critical. Whether they're university user groups, anybody in your class, building a network that way, projects that you've worked on, teachers and professors are important. And then joining different sort of community-based or professional user groups on LinkedIn. There's so many, I've lost track. I think I'm a part of 60 or 65 user groups now that you can join and contribute discussions, add ideas to discussions that you're seeing. People start to notice you, start writing, whether you're doing, like this, doing a blog or just writing content that you're putting out there. You build an audience that way, people with like minds and ideas that they want to share. Um, Other social media avenues like X and TikTok and, Facebook, there's so many different groups on those as well that you can join, building, community that way. So don't try and just put it all in one bucket, mix and match and diversify sort of how you both reach out and talk and communicate to people.
I think that was very well summarized. And kind of on that note as well, um, so you've had experiences working with startups and working with big companies, and has there been any sort of difference you've seen in the way that they've gone about the hiring process? Have you been able to give any sort of input to them on what to change or what to really look for in a candidate, and how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, we're in a sort of company-driven cycle right now. So there's a lot of people looking. It's sort of flipped from, pre-COVID and even during COVID, where, there was a lot of job openings and not a lot of candidates. The talent pool wasn't as robust as it is now. So especially larger companies are definitely augmenting their interview process to the degree where it's a little bit longer now. I try and teach hiring managers and, really about streamlining the process and making it, keeping it as short as possible, whether it's 4 or 5 steps. If there's a technical challenge or some kind of interview assessment, keeping it as minimum as possible. But you mainly see that at larger companies. The startups are still a little bit nimble and they're able to get through a process pretty quickly, which gives them an advantage usually. But typically larger, mid-sized and larger companies will have more of a budget and probably bring on interns more readily than a startup who needs people to hit the ground running and really be more experienced. So it's a double-edged sword between sort of the smaller and larger companies, but it's really about sort of honing in the budget and looking at the process and trying to streamline it so you're not in an interview process for 2 to 3 months. I like to try and teach people that are heavily involved in the interview process to keep it within 4 to 5 weeks if possible. I think that warrants a good applicant and candidate interview process and allows you to be more nimble and attract the right talent.
Yeah, for sure. And this is kind of the question that everyone has in their mind. What are your tips on how to convert a internship to a full-time position? Are there anything you see in candidates that have that quality that they're able to do that? And is there any of your inputs on the conversion factor in this case?
Yeah. I mean, it really depends when somebody's going into an internship, they want to ask, will this internship turn into a full-time role after I graduate? That'd be the first question. Typically it's a yes, especially at larger companies. They are looking to convert their interns to full-time folks. It's pretty rare that they don't. But typically I'd say the conversion rate's about 60%. It really depends on budget. Let's say a company wants to bring on 10 interns, they probably want to convert 6 of those typically to full-time. So they'll take the best 6. So it's really about being available, contributing to the project, trying to be there every day, you know, having input. Um, participating in the weekly syncs and the meetings and adding valuable sort of, project-based input that you're providing for the internship that you're involved in, I think is key.
Yeah, for sure. And another aspect I wanted to bring up is you said that you did have experience in matching companies with talent, especially the companies which are in the analytics field. So I was just wondering, how has your experience been matching, especially with your time in Google and other top companies? How has that kind of shaped your entire career in the way you look at internships now, or not just internships, just generally like the recruiting cycle?
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. It's, when the first moment you get a job opening, you evaluate the description and you build your search based on, the key factors of each job description, whether it's different coding languages or level of the position. Um, you know, Hiring managers look at the types of universities people go to, the geographies, what projects they've worked on, the degree that they have, whether it's a bachelor's, master's, PhD. So, once you have all that honed in, then you can really sort of, look at the resume and look at the person's profile and build, a heat map on the type of candidate that you want. And so it really just depends on what the company need is and the level of the role. But, after you have all that, then you can really sort of drill down and look at the person and what sort of projects they're contributing. And then you look at the other things like communication style and availability, whether it's, a work citizenship situation versus, can they start immediately? Will they need, future sponsorship? Stuff like that, all the other sort of factors that go into hiring somebody based on budget.
And what's been the most rewarding experience you've had throughout your career? Any standout moments that you don't want to ever forget, and it's like one of those highlights in your recruitment career?
Yeah, recruiting's a journey. It's a roller coaster ride. It's definitely up and down. I've always taught myself, don't get too high, don't get too low. So there's moments of, despair, and then there's moments of really supercharged opportunities that you're involved in. In terms of, some of the highs, I think, there's too many to count, but, I think just changing somebody's life, getting them that job that they're really interested in, the company that they really want to be a part of, their reaction. People that I've been connected to for years, some decades, that still reach out to me about opportunities. You've made an impact in their life. When you think about sort of the 5 to 10 most stressful things in your life, between death and other things, career change is like in the top 5. So it's a big point of your life. You spend most of your waking hours working and being a part of a team. So it's important that you try and get it right. You don't always, but at the end of the day, that you change somebody's life by getting them the job they want. That's always the biggest feel good moment for me.
And how did you decide to start your own consulting firm after you've worked with these big companies? How was the process of setting that up and getting clients?
Yeah. Yeah, once I moved from the Bay Area to the Northwest, I decided, I didn't want to, I didn't want to travel as much, so I decided to open an LLC, and I already had at that point 14 years of experience, so I decided to start my own firm. And, it's always been just me. I've always, focused on just what I can do from a fractional project standpoint. From time to time, I've had, 1 or 2 people, I've employed that have helped me on some larger projects, but for the most part, it's been just me. But I like that. I like, owning, projects and really building teams. That's my sort of core focus and interest and coaching people. And so recently I've created my own website, and it's really focused around coaching and fractional recruiting. It's been long overdue, but I finally did that. So I'm excited about sort of the next, endeavor, which is getting certified in coaching and, coaching people to really help them.
Yeah, and kind of on to bring it back to internships, this is the time that's going to get started in a couple of months. The recruitment cycle, everyone's going to be really busy applying, and the recruitment cycle for internships is pretty different from the cycle for full-time jobs. So have you seen any visible changes, especially since the pandemic, in the job market or the ever-evolving internship market? And how have you tried to incorporate that within your own consulting startup in order to teach, you know, people from these companies how to hire when it comes to, a summer program rather than a full-time job?
Yeah, I think every company wants to, have some sort of internship program where they're bringing on new hires, new graduates, to, really fill some of those, um, you know, lesser experience and lower level roles that really, because it's about upward mobility and really building out a team and, hiring great people and smart people that can, grow with a company. Um, the changes I've seen, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years, there's definitely been sort of a big push to run more lean. So budgets have definitely been slashed, and hiring has definitely gone down a bit, which has affected salaries and compensation and just overall talent pool of roles that are available. I mean, there are still companies that, have internship and hiring programs and have partnerships with different universities. I know Google is still very much involved with MIT and some of the other schools, and Facebook, Meta the same, and Apple the same. But typically these are larger companies and they can still afford to have these programs. I think the series A, Bs, and Cs of the world are still running pretty lean and being more thoughtful about hiring. So internship programs at the sort of the smaller, earlier stage companies are definitely less right now, but it's all cyclical. It'll change. It'll come back. It'll be a candidate-driven market again, probably within a year and a half. I'm guessing. These things always come around as we sort of get the VC money back in sort of the market and the flow. But I just recommend that new grads or upcoming grads just really sort of hone in, build their network, and partner with their professors and their career centers, and also any folks in the VC world that they know. Really get your resume and your experience out there, because the more eyes you have on sort of what you're doing in your projects, the better that you're more apt to get something, right away.
Yeah, and speaking of AI in particular, have you seen any since that's been a big thing since COVID especially, have you seen that play a role in the hiring process at all? And what's your take on that?
Yeah, it's the big debate of our time right now. It's how AI is, whether it's affecting, application reviews or not, or online, application processes and interview processes. I haven't seen it to much extent yet. I've only seen it from a sourcing standpoint. Some of the tools I've used have been AI based. I'm really sort of automating the searches and, especially for a role that's going to attract, a few thousand candidates, really sort of drilling down on the specifics that you want. From resume review process, yeah, there's a ATS system I'm using now where you can build out pre sort of application questions that are sort of, I call knockouts. So if a candidate answers a specific way, their resume will be rejected. It just really helps with sort of flow, because recently I posted a full stack engineering role, and over the course of a few weeks, I got 3,000 applications. So there's no way I can review that many resumes. So you need to, put in sort of safeguards and, knock out questions that are sort of, streamlined to what you really want. And I would either call that AI or not. I mean, it's really sort of the applicant tracking system, having tools that helps the recruiter. When you're the only recruiter and you've got 7 openings at a company, time is limited. Every second counts. So you're really sort of focused on quality versus quantity. So that's the extent of the AI that I've been privy to. I know there's more sort of stuff coming, and there's been discussions on it and talks, and I've seen some of the topics, and yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see who adopts it, because that's what it's about, right? It's about adoption and budget and who has time to learn it.
For sure. And, kind of on a wrapping up note, but how can we sort of democratize access to the internships and all these different programs that are available to these companies? Because clearly they do want candidates to come to them. And previously the issue was kind of the lack of candidates, but now there's so much demand and,
Yeah.
kind of like a withering amount of uh, supply, I would say, for internships. But I mean, the more I would say it's more like companies don't know that they can, especially startups, they don't know if they can have internships and can they support that. But with those existing companies, how can we sort of allow, students from all across the globe, all from different backgrounds, regardless of like any sort of economic status or location, how can we kind of make it more available to them? Because I do know that I go to UT, so at UT it's kind of provided to you on a platter. But for
Yeah.
those smaller schools, those community colleges, how can we sort of democratize access to them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And you're right. You think of UT and schools like that, they're, top 20, 25 schools, and those resumes and profiles will always get the first look. For folks that are at the community college level or universities that, aren't necessarily near the top of the list, it's really about your network. It's really about partnering with not only your career center and professors, but and who they know. But it's kind of like Hollywood. It's who you know, not what you know. The what you know comes after you start and really, doing the role. But the who you know is basically, networking and getting into an opportunity. And unfortunately, a lot of companies will only look at the top universities when it comes to internships. And it is what it is right now. We're in that sort of time period where they have their pick of the litter, so to speak, and the lot. And so it makes it harder when there's just a robust talent pool of people available, and some not on the same, you know, equal playing field. So it's really about, like I said, your LinkedIn profile, your resume, being dialed in and really building your network and honing into exactly what you want to do, and being very thoughtful and pragmatic about where you apply, and contacting the right people and having those conversations, because I see a lot of people get frustrated when they're applying to 15, 20 places a day and not getting any response. I don't recommend that. I recommend really being thoughtful about where you're applying. Really build out a company wish list and do some research first before you start applying. Look at the roles, look at the people who are posting the roles, start having conversations with those folks, do some informal interviews or just discussions with some people in user groups and chats and potential hiring managers to get a feel for what they're looking for.
For sure. That sounds, I mean, I think that summed it up perfectly. And I know this is like great feedback for me as well to focus more on quality rather than the quantity of internships that you're applying to, especially for this recruitment cycle. But thank you so much, Tim, for being on our podcast. Definitely learned so much great insights. We'll definitely apply these as well. And thank you to everyone who is watching the podcast. And be sure to, you know, go on to Internexus for the summer 2025 recruitment cycle internships. And once again, thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you, Shreya.